Anxiety can be really frustrating to live with every day. For a lot of people, it'll mess up their sleep. It'll mess up their relationships. They don't feel like themselves when they're at home with their kids or with their wife or their husband. They feel totally disturbed by it. Their sleep is off, their work is off, they can't focus because there's some kind of rattling feeling inside that they can't just cool down. They can't calm down. And it's easy to get really frustrated because this can be a really hard experience. And so for a lot of people, they try all kinds of things to tamp it down, and they can be really good at it sometimes. Where they change their diet, they change their sleeping patterns, they change all kinds of things. But one thing that I hear often is that they try to do something like deep breathing. They try to do some kind of exercise that'll help them calm down. And here's the frustrating thing about it is that it works for a little bit of time until the anxiety peaks again. And what they usually tell themselves is, I must not be diligent enough. I must not be trying hard enough or being good enough at tamping down the anxiety. And here's where it's tricky, is that in this kind of situation, it's easy to see anxiety as a villain, as some kind of intruder, like a cancerous tumor that we need to remove and get rid of. And this sets up a really terrible, pernicious, constant battle that the person faces daily. And maybe you're familiar with this, of what it's like to have that in the back of your mind of how am I going to manage my anxiety when I go into this meeting? How am I going to manage this anxiety when I go home, or when I have my day off? How am I going to actually feel present? And so they try to do a series of things to make themselves stop feeling so anxious, and they feel bad about it themselves. They feel ashamed. They feel weak inside, like I must not be doing something right. And so this is something I hear often when people come in for anxiety, is they want me to help them fix the anxiety. And here's the problem, is that if we try to fix the anxiety, it'll always resurface. It'll always get louder even. So a lot of times people will try to push down their anxiety. They do a lot of deep breathing, and then it'll resurface as a panic attack. And so what are we supposed to do here? Well, the first thing I want to offer is that this is not your first time having to handle anxiety. So I want you to think about the history of your life here, about maybe some of the first times that you would have felt anxious when you were younger. And the reason I'm having you think about this is because our brains build patterns based on our past experience to try to organize ourselves in our present moments and to predict the future. So what that means is that we kind of form a template of how anxiety is going to go. And we base all of our present interactions with anxiety on those past templates. When we first were born, we are pretty anxious, right? When you see a baby come out, or if you've ever witnessed that, or if you see a newborn, when they get crying and upset, they get really anxious. Their whole body, you can see it, their face turns red. They're just, everything is wrong in the world and nothing is right. You were once like that. All of us were, where we were incredibly vulnerable, and we really depended on the people around us to help us manage the anxiety, to manage our unsafety, to manage our overwhelm. And that went differently for some of us. For some of us, maybe we had tuned in enough caregivers, and whenever we would get anxious, they wouldn't get too overwhelmed. They'd stay with us, and they'd know it was going to be okay, and they'd help us calm down. They'd rub our back. Or maybe you can think of moments in your life early on where you stubbed a toe, or you hurt something, or you lost a toy, or something broke, or you fell down and you got so overwhelmed. And maybe you have a memory of what it was like when your parents would respond to you that way. Would they criticize you? Would they remain distant? Would they be unhelpful? Or would they help you soothe and calm down? Would they say, "Oh, buddy, I know what that feels like," or, "That's really hard, isn't it? Hey, let's cool down. Hey, let me get you a Band-Aid." Even you can tell in the tone of their voice that they are comforting. Maybe you had someone in your life like that. And yet for some of us, there's this anxious way of dealing with anxiety. One of the things I think is prominent with some people who get frustrated with their own anxiety is that they had caregivers early on who would get frustrated with them when they were anxious, when they felt weak. And so it's this thing called avoidant attachment, where you feel as a kid, I can't actually feel what I'm feeling because it's going to drive mom and dad nuts. It's going to make them more upset with me. So I have to somehow tamp it down. I have to cool it down. And this can get into a pattern where we're frustrated with ourselves when we get anxious. We get really overwhelmed. We feel like I just need to tamp down on this better. If I could just do that, then I'd be good. Then I'd be okay. If I could just manage the anxiety better, if I could just hold it all in, if I could just make it go away, then mom and dad will be okay with me. But this is not a good way to deal with anxiety precisely for what you're feeling right now, which is that it keeps you having to always be vigilant, always be in a battle with yourself. And I'm going to say something that's going to make me sound like such a therapist, I know, but it's true, which is that your anxiety is actually not a villain. It's a signal that's helping you see what healing you need. Anxiety is a signal that you're feeling unsafe for some reason. And the first thing we want to do before we try to make it go away, before we try to do all the good deep breathing exercises, is to stop and be curious about why we're feeling anxious. Why am I actually feeling this right now? What is so unsafe to me right now? How do I feel fragile in my work or with finances and money or in my relationship? What feels like it's on the rocks for me? If we can't ask that question, then the anxiety will keep getting louder because the anxiety wants you to know that something is not all right. It's not okay right now. And the first step, if we're going to actually reduce that pattern and actually feel in a good way, secure inside, without having to always be vigilant, we're going to need to be curious about our own anxiety. What you really want isn't for the anxiety to go away. What you really want is to feel safe. The anxiety is a cue that you're not feeling safe. And so the question becomes, how do we return to safety? The first thing we do, people who are securely attached are able to identify the pain. If we go back to that initial interaction with the parent and child, a parent who's really securely attached to their kid, when the kid gets anxious or overwhelmed, the parent will go, hey, where does it hurt? What happened? Right? That's the first step. And so that's what mature adults, that's what we do with our pain. The first thing we do is we try to identify what is actually feeling unsafe or overwhelming. The second thing is we soothe ourselves. Sometimes as a parent, you rub the kid's back, or you put your hand through their hair, you hug them, you hold them close. This kind of attachment helps you already know I'm all right. I'm not really abandoned. I'm not falling apart. And so mature people hold that kind of space inside. They're able to either feel close to, let's say, God or their attachment figure, their own parents, or they're able to feel close to their spouse or their partner. They're able to remind themselves that they're okay, they're loved, it's okay. And that already kind of helps you calm down. The third thing is that secure people ask for help. The parent, they don't just soothe the kid and rub their back. Sometimes they get them a Band-Aid or they try to fix the toy that was broken. They try to do something about it after addressing the safety need. And the fourth thing is that they create a plan. They after they ask for help, they actually do something about it, right? And the fifth thing is that they're able to ask for help. Sorry, not ask for help, but they're able to help other people do the same thing. So secure people, because they feel good, they don't feel constantly anxious and overwhelmed, they're actually able to help other people. They're able to help their spouse. They're able to help their partners or their coworkers. They have some kind of security inside that they can offer to other people. This is a much different way of managing anxiety than just trying to battle it out, to deep breathe, to make it go down, to tamp it down. And the first step is becoming curious about what the unsafety is for you. So as you think about that today, think about, where do I feel most anxious? When do I feel most anxious? When are the moments where I know that when I have a break in my day, I'm going to feel this anxiety flooding back in? Or maybe it's when you go to sleep tonight. See if you can make time, make space to be curious about what the unsafety is inside of you.